I'd like to start by saying thank you for all of you who are attending today. And I'm Gloria Quedu with the Caritas Consciousness Project, and today's guest is Rebekah Hirsch. And I'm going to just give you a little introduction, Rebekah. Rebekah has been an astrologer for over 30 years, and she's coming to us from London. In recent years, her understanding of astrology has shifted to a profound experience of the planetary archetypes, both as elemental currents comprising a person's human energy field, and also as a powerful living presence in the universal field. Rebekah is an advanced level graduate of the Barbara Brennan School of Healing here in the US, as well as a professional archetypal astrologer, having trained with Liz Green and Howard Sasportas at the Center for Psychological Astrology in London. She's also a trainer and facilitator of the transpersonal work known as voice dialogue. She lives in London, where she runs a private practice as an energy healer and astrologer. Her book, Charting the Soul, Astrology, Characterology, and the Human Energy Field, available on Amazon, published in 2016, is a synthesis of archetypal astrology and the Brennan approach. So a synthesis of astrology and healing, which I love. Rebekah runs her own Charting the Soul workshops based on the themes from her books. She regularly gives lectures at the Astrological Lodge of London and other astrology groups, as well as teaching voice dialogue. Rebekah is also a visionary painter. And if those of you who got the flyer that I sent out, the email flyer, the artwork in that flyer is Rebekah's work, Rebekah's artwork, which I think is beautiful. So welcome, Rebekah, and thank you so much for making time to be with us today.
Oh, it's a pleasure. Absolutely. Thank you very much for asking me. As you know, we're living through amazing times, very challenging, lots of disturbance, I think, a lot of fear. So here we go. Here we are. This is just to say the energy for today. We've got a lot of planets, the Sun, Uranus, Mercury and Venus in Taurus. We've got the moon in Libra. We've got Libra rising right now. So this is a very Venusian moment. But it's, but I'm not going to keep the slides up all the time. But I will go back in and do the next one. Yeah, so this is just a little bit of astrological information. If anybody who's interested in astrology will know that 2020, this extraordinary year that we've just been through, had a lineup of planets that was pretty much unprecedented. We had Pluto, then Saturn, then Jupiter, all conjunct in the sign of Capricorn. And really, that hasn't happened in anybody's lifetime. That hasn't happened nothing like that has happened for hundreds of years. And really, it hasn't happened for thousands of years. And really, it kind of hasn't happened ever. I really looked back through all the years that Jupiter, Saturn, and Pluto would come so close, within 5 degrees of being in the same part of space, in the sign of Capricorn. And at the end of last year, and again, I'm sure everybody knows because there was a lot of hoo-ha about it, at the winter solstice, Jupiter and Saturn kind of held hands and moved out of Capricorn and into Aquarius. And then there was a lot of stuff as well. Is this the dawning of the age of Aquarius and so on? And it was a big shift. It was the end of that Capricorn focus and into Aquarius. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about those two. I'll just stop sharing for a moment. I have to minimize that anyway. So the focus in these times, going from Capricorn to Aquarius, is on society. It's on civilization. It's like what are the structures that we use in our groups? It's about group consciousness. This is Aquarius. It's all about the group. And just to sort of try and illustrate that a bit, if you go round the signs of the zodiac, if you start with Aries, it's total individuality. Taurus, me and my body. Gemini, my mind, my thinking, my communicating. Cancer, my feelings, my home, what nurtures me. Leo, me shining, creating, playing. And Virgo, me bringing it all together, all my skills. And so on. And then we move into Libra, and Libra's, well, now there's two people here. It's not just about me. There's me and another. There's me in relationship. And Scorpio, so what happens in relationship? What happens when those two people, really meet each other? And then it moves on to the bigger picture, into Sagittarius. Like, what does it mean? And what are the rules, and what's going to make it work when groups of people come together? And Capricorn is an earth sign, and it's the sign most associated with life on earth. Well, no, Taurus, I would say, in Capricorn. And Capricorn is about society, and it's about the structures, by the rules, in Sagittarius and Capricorn. What's going to make our society function? What's going to keep us safe? It's about the group. It's no longer about the individual. It's how we relate to each other and how we work with each other. And Capricorn has to do with many things. It has obviously a relevance to the individual as well. But in the way that I'm looking at it, it's about law, it's about politics, it's about institutions, it's about finance, it's about the police. It's the whole structure of society. And 12, 13 years ago, in 2008, Pluto, the planet Pluto, entered the sign of Capricorn. And almost as soon as Pluto entered Capricorn, we had the financial crash. So Pluto is the lord of the underworld, and it has to do with power. And in the decade, more than a decade since, as Pluto's been traveling slowly through Capricorn, I think what we've seen flagged up over and over again is stuff coming up from the unconscious, shadow stuff about power, and all this stuff about Capricorn, about the law, about money, about justice, who has the power, who's disempowered, is, vast power imbalances that we have seen. And all the time that Pluto's been traveling through Capricorn, more and more consciousness about our society, about the shadow, about the things that we don't want to see, we don't want to think about the way that we run our world and who is running it, and how honorable or honest or dishonest. Capricorn has a lot to do with ethics and responsibility. But what we've seen with Pluto going through Capricorn is a lot about how the ethics have been lost, how principles have been sacrificed. And so 2020, suddenly the whole world grinds to a halt. A lot of astrologers, including me, did not see the pandemic coming. We saw a big confrontation with power and authority, but we didn't see this. And it was, obviously it's a tragedy, and it was nature's brilliant way of bringing the whole human race to a halt. because one of the things that Capricorn, and the ruler of Capricorn is Saturn, and I'm going to be talking about Saturn in the second half. And one of the things that Saturn wants is us to learn to be still, to not rush at things, to not be just acting on impulse, and making decisions that only come from the head. And so suddenly, the whole world we're stuck in our homes with only ourselves or a few other people, and all this empty space. And of course, I don't know if it was like in America, but in England, you couldn't get flour. You couldn't buy flour for about 3 months because everybody was buying flour to make bread. Everybody started baking. Everybody started doing home activities. I mean, it was wonderful. Yoga classes, meditation classes, they went through the ceiling, which is great. And in that silence, in that stillness, in that, sudden leaving the pressure of the daily grind, you have to wonder what's happening to people. What are they learning? What are we learning about what our values, about what matters to each other, how lovely it is to spend time with your family, unless one of those poor souls who got trapped within a difficult family. And as I say, obviously it was very, very frightening, and still is, and terribly sad. And yet, what I felt always in last year was this opportunity for this Capricorn energy, just stop and reflect. And of course, we had eruptions. We had eruptions of Me Too, and we had eruptions of Black Lives Matter. We had the tragic murder of George Floyd, and everything that came out from that. But it's all consciousness. That's the thing. It's like, however disturbing, it hits us, and then we have the chance to bring it into consciousness and to reflect in this silence, in this stillness. What does it mean? And at the end of the year, and again, I don't know, and it was a very dark time in England, in the UK, in November, December, when we went back into lockdown, not knowing, what was going to be the way out. And that was when this conjunction became so intense. And of course, you had your election, which was, to many, the first sign of hope. It's like, oh my God, there's a lot of craziness, that we're not completely crazy. We didn't have anything like that over here, but we, so glad to see that something's shifting. But certainly a very, November last year, very dark, very high numbers of infection from the virus, and all the fragmentation, all the wars with people, with the anti-vaxxers and the pro-vaxxers, and all of the QAnon and everything, all this conflict. And at exactly that moment, then American election come on through, and at that moment we get the winter solstice, and Jupiter and Saturn finally leave this intense, powerful conjunction, and they move together. They're holding hands, and they go into Aquarius. Thinking back to sort of looking around the wheel of the zodiac, Aquarius is also, it's about society, it's about the group. But it's very different. Let me see what my next slide says. So a huge shift. Yes. Let's try this one. Yes. Let's go to the next one. Well, there's a little bit here that's relevant. So Capricorn and Aquarius are both about civilization, our groups, and about society. And Capricorn is an earth sign, so it focuses on practical issues, on laws. It likes to maintain that, it wants to make safety, wants stability, wants people to be able to thrive, in safe houses, in a safe society where things are under control. And Aquarius is an air sign. People think that Aquarius is a water sign. It's not. and when we talk about the elements, let's see what my next slide is. Just go back. If we talk about the elements, air is to do with the mind. So where Capricorn is very practical, it's like, will it work? Is it going to function? Are we going to get stability? And don't let's rock the boat too much. Aquarius, this movement from Capricorn to Aquarius, it's got to change. We can't go on like this. And Aquarius has very much, its essence, it has to do with the evolution of consciousness. So the ruler of Capricorn is Saturn, which is limitation and structure and law and feet on the ground and is it practical? Let's not go too far. And the ruler of Aquarius is Uranus. And Uranus has to do with the mind. It's not, it can be very sensible, but it's not of the earth. It's not that kind of practical, it's mental. And the archetype of Uranus, the energy of Uranus, is that which connects us. It goes, the Hindu model goes right out through the crown chakra and out to the universe. It's what connects us to the mind of God, to universal consciousness, to other dimensions. I still think of it as up and down, as higher dimensions, higher vibrations. Uranus, is the archetype of the mind. It's that part of the mind that can do that, can go up, 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 and out to the heavens, out to the stars, out to the cosmos, and telepathically commune with whatever is out there, with mystical awareness, with cosmic knowledge. And that's the shift that's happened. We've gone from the limitations of Capricorn and the dismay, as Pluto has brought up all the issues around power and politics and finance and law. And Aquarius then takes that information. What are we going to do? What is the vision? Where are we going? And I know, Gloria, that's very much what your group has been holding, over the months. Where are we headed? What do we want? What do we want to create? What about the co-creation of what comes next? We've had a long, hard look at many of the institutions, that hold the glue of our society. But in many ways, we don't like what we see. Aquarius, is an evolution of consciousness and very much sisterhood and brotherhood. We're all equal. All of humanity matters. There isn't, a hierarchy that matters more. We all matter. We as we go into the future, we go together. What is the dream? What's the vision? What are we hoping for? Because Aquarius wants a different future. Uranus wants a different future. It's the sign of change. What are the ideals? What are the changes? And this thing of co-creation, what is it that we're going to create? So the archetype that I associate with Aquarius is the archetype of Prometheus, and there's some lovely images there, but I'm going to stop sharing for a moment so that you can. So Prometheus was he was one of the earliest of the Greek gods, and I always tell the stories, the myths and the legends that go with astrology, because they speak to so very deep archetypal principles that we are holding, and a lot of people don't like it. That the Greek myths are very patriarchal. They're not very kind to women. The women in the Greek myths don't have a great time. Nevertheless, I think, there's very important information about these archetypes that are the building blocks of our psyche. Prometheus is one of the earliest of the gods, and Zeus is now the king of the gods. And Prometheus is the god who creates the human race. He takes the clay and he makes these little people out of clay. And then the goddess Pallas Athena, who's another archetype I associate very much with Aquarius, wisdom. She comes and breathes life. And so the little earthy figures come to life. And Prometheus loves the human race. And he sees them, you know, they're living in the instinctive way of an animal. And he goes to Zeus and says, I want to give them consciousness. I want to give them the fire of Olympus. And Zeus is a bit annoyed with Prometheus, not particularly keen on the human race, and he says no. And Prometheus has the gift of foresight. He can see into the future. And he knows what will happen to him, which is not good, but nevertheless, he goes ahead and he takes the fire from Mount Olympus. He steals the fire, sets light to a fennel branch, takes it down to the plains below, and he teaches the human race how to use fire, which is, you know, melting metal and cookery and all those things. And he does a lot of teaching. He teaches the human race. He loves the human race, and he's a principle of education and learning, and that is so much the function of Aquarius. And when Zeus sees what happens, he looks out and sees all the little fires starting up, and he realizes that Prometheus has disobeyed him. So the first thing that Zeus does is he creates Pandora's box. And he goes down to the earth in disguise, and he presents the brother of Prometheus, Epimetheus. First of all, he introduces him to Pandora, who becomes the bride of Epimetheus, and then he gives them Pandora's box. And Prometheus has said to Epimetheus, don't let Pandora open the box, but Epimetheus does, you know, anyway, and she does. And out come all the illnesses of mankind. There's sickness, disease, old age, toil, strife, hatred. And so in this way, Zeus curses mankind. But also to remember that Pandora slams shut the lid of the box, and she hears a knocking, and she opens it once more. And the last of these energies to come out of the box is hope. And that is so much one of the gifts of Aquarius. And then the next thing that Zeus does is he's going to punish Prometheus horribly. He has Prometheus chained to Mount Olympus, and every day an eagle comes down and pecks out the liver of Prometheus. And Prometheus is immortal. He can't die. Overnight, his liver grows back, and every day the eagle comes down again. And this is going to be the eternal fate of Prometheus. And in the end, he's saved. And we get in another archetype, which is Chiron, the centaur, who has received a wound of his own, and that he can't cure. Chiron is the archetype of the wounded healer. He's not able to heal himself. And he's wounded in his animal part, and Chiron has this wound in his horsey part. And Chiron asks Zeus to be allowed to die, and he exchanges his life for that of Prometheus, and Prometheus is freed. And so just to unpick that very ancient story a bit, you know, as I said earlier, Prometheus is he's the archetype of the evolution of consciousness. He sees the potential for the human race. He sees far into the future. You know, and in a way, by bringing the divine fire, he's bringing consciousness, and he's bringing the hope of mankind finding their own divinity. And one of the things that links Chiron and Prometheus is suffering. So gods don't suffer. They don't feel pain. They represent, to a certain extent, they represent a different plane of consciousness. They're up there on Mount Olympus. They don't often descend into the realm of matter where we live. And if we think of Prometheus and Chiron, what they get is the suffering of the body. The liver, where Prometheus is often considered the seat of emotion. And with Chiron, he's not wounded in his human half, he's wounded in his animal half. And I think there's something in this for Aquarius. And it's really important as we head into this very Aquarian time, to have this awareness, to understand this about Aquarius. The ruling planet, every sign in astrology has a ruling planet. I've said the ruling planet of Aquarius is Uranus, and it gives us this kind of telepathic ability. It's what we find in meditation. It's guidance. It's connection to divine consciousness. It's connection to universal love and the concept, the ideal that we are all one. That's where Uranus can take us. And Aquarius wanting to align with that vision, what is the potential of the human race? Can we find our, Pallas Athena, the archetype of wisdom? Can we find wisdom? Can we start to integrate and embody this fire of consciousness? And that's what, as we move into a much more Aquarian time, there's much more about the ideal and the visionary and the future. So much about the future. Prometheus who sees the future. And at the other end, so there's these lofty ideals and this mystical vision. And also, it goes with genius, Einstein and all the great cosmologists, the mathematicians who see beyond where ordinary people see. And at the other end, we've got the woe that is released from Pandora's box, the sufferings of the human race, the unkindness, the cruelty of sickness, strife, battles, war, hatred, alongside hope. And we have the suffering of Prometheus, and we have the suffering of Chiron. And, it connects, for me, it connects with the suffering of Christ. It's something about the crucifixion, the cross of matter, that somehow to be incarnated in a body on planet Earth at this time, part of the deal is suffering. You will get sick, you will lose the things that you love, and in the end, we will die. And, how you think about death is another thing. For many of us, it's a revolving door. It's a cycle. That this is part of what it is to be human, is to tolerate the laws of matter. And this is, something I do associate with Capricorn and the cross of matter. And with Aquarius, because it's not an earth sign, because it's so visionary, because it's so much of the mind, it's something to be aware of. We've got Saturn and Jupiter in Aquarius. Whatever sign Saturn is very important for the human race. Saturn is so important for humanity. It's where we focus consciousness. And so in all the talks that I'm giving at the moment, it's like, so here we are, we've got this fantastic opportunity of Jupiter, principle of expansion in Aquarius, vision, idealism, connecting to the cosmos, where are we going to go? Where is society going to go? You know, we've had this terrible year where we've been so confronted with conflict and fragmentation and, you know, and Facebook wars and social media weirdness and lies, you know, downright lies and distortions. And so, you know, the Aquarius are like, right, you know, now it's time, the vision, the future, the possibilities, the potential, the divine potential that is in every human being, the divine spark that is in every living being. You know, how do we access that? How do we put that at the basis of our decisions? You know, where Capricorn puts practicality and will it work, and have we got enough money, and have we got enough time, and where are we going to get the materials, and have we got the skills? With Aquarius, it's like, we have to do this. We have to go forward. We have to change. We have to have renewal. And what's the ideal and what's the vision? And the challenge that is with the human race this year and next is about that connection to the earth, to the body, to animals, to nature. Because Aquarius can quite happily take off and just be reading a book or looking at a screen or looking at a mobile phone or working out a formula and forget about the body. And there's something about this myth where, you know, with the suffering of the body, don't forget the earth, don't forget nature, don't forget to honor the body and to honor the earth. And there are one or two nations, I think, at the moment, I should really know this, I think one is Ecuador, that have put it into their constitution that the earth herself has rights, that water has rights. So, you know, somebody who, I'm sorry, Coca-Cola, but who wants to go and drain a river and use all that water in I love Coca-Cola, but use it in their factories and displace all the local people and so on. The river has rights. People, you know, the right to water, put that in law. The earth has rights. No, you can't just go and wipe out the entire Amazon rainforest. You know, we have rights, and the people who live in the forest have rights. And these are the kind of things that totally appeal to the Aquarius, to the vision, the future. These are the kind of things that are, how are we going? And all the other questions that have come up about Black Lives Matter, about the role of women, about protection of children, you know, all these very challenging, about the distribution of wealth, you know, all the upset we feel about that, you know, that goes into the pot as well. And so I think what I'd like to do in just in the next few minutes is just pause and do a little guided visualization. That's what I'm hoping is that, you know, that everybody has their own connection with Uranus. Everybody has their own connection with the energy of Aquarius, with the energy of Capricorn. And I'm sure that, you know, many of you will have been doing this anyway. But so this is just another opportunity to go into that visionary space. So I'm just going to talk us through. It'll be very short. It'll just be about 5 to 10 minutes. And then we can have some sharing or some questions. Always when, you know, there's a guided visualization, a meditation, if something feels uncomfortable, don't do it, come out. Do what feels right to you. Trust yourself. If you don't want to do what my voice is saying, do what feels right to you. So this is an invitation, and I'm going to do this as well, to just get comfortable. Just using the breath, just start breathing. And as soon as you shut your eyes, if that feels good, connecting with your own inner world. So you've been listening for some time. Just take a deep breath and be with yourself. And what I do as I start to breathe, I'm starting to notice anything in my body, and nothing has to be fixed. Nothing has to change. And I'm noticing, that I've got quite a lot of energy in my head. And as I breathe, I'm focusing that breath and focusing the energy down. Right down, pelvic cradle, that vertical energy current that goes through the center of your energy field, right down to the earth, feet on the ground. And keep breathing, noticing your own body. Anything, some places might feel tense, some places might feel warm or cold or tired or energized. And just being with it, just being with the body and letting yourself root down into the earth in whatever way works for you. And here we are, in different continents, thousands of miles, separating us with the Midwest, East Coast, and the UK. And you can take this moment to connect with your land, your place, the ground beneath your feet. And then in your own way, breathing back up to your center. And at the center of each of us is a great light. This individual flame, individual piece of God, piece of universal, soul spirit that lives in each of us and that is us. This unique essence that is you, that nothing else in the universe, only you can hold this essence. And keeping that connection to the earth, but breathing up, right up to the crown of your head, to the crown chakra. And letting your consciousness go right out to the stars, to the cosmos, to other dimensions, the world of spirit. And in your own way, that divine presence, energy being, let that come into your field. And in your own way, looking out across the earth, this amazing, beautiful planet, this sea of life, the oceans in the skies, and walking the earth, the animals, the plants, microbes, and the human race. Gathered in amazing cities, amazing giant cities and giant buildings, or living in little humble homes in the middle of nowhere, in the mountains, in the valleys, in the woods, in the fields. This sacred responsibility of the human race for the earth. And in whatever way arises for you, just let it come. What is this idealistic Aquarius? What is this vision of co-creation? What is the fundamental qualities and principles and choices that we want to make as we go forward? What is the kind of society that we want to leave for our children and our grandchildren? For the animals and the plants and the landscape, the oceans. So in just allowing yourself a moment to keep your grounding, keep your connection to the stars. And like Prometheus, to look to the future. And what is the vision that inspires you? Where might the human race go from here? And trust yourself, just follow whatever comes. And so as you're in this place and looking into the future, looking for your own vision, the kind of world that we want to create. Just be aware of what is happening in your heart. If it feels right, your love of the earth, love of nature, and love for people. And whatever aspect of your vision is with you right now, and also hold that in your heart. And making sure that you're also connected to the earth. So you become a bridge between heaven and earth. And keep breathing. And in your own time, coming back, bringing yourself back into everyday consciousness, getting ready to open your eyes. And I would love to hear from anybody who would like to share anything from that experience, anything at all, and also any questions about what we've been talking about.
Well, I see the, when you were saying about the vision, I thought the vision is one of this shift from fear to love. And I thought, there's so much fear right now, not just around the pandemic, but, politically, the white supremacy that is and I see these things as the last gasp of this older order that knows its days are limited, but it can do a lot of damage in the meantime before it is over, right?
Yeah.
But and I thought about how love is such a higher frequency than fear, that those of us who are making this, shift every day a little bit more, every day looking for places where we still have fear, right? And trying to replace them with love and trying to infuse love into those little corners. The more we increase that love, the faster this shift will come about, right? On every level, on a cultural level, political level, economic, everything. I love Jacinda Ardern in New Zealand. I loved what you said about whether it was Ecuador or whatever country it was, about the rights of nature, right? The rights of rivers, and Jacinda Ardern, in her economic policy, she states that economic growth must never come how did she put it? Must never come at the expense of the well-being and the happiness of the people in the country, of all the people, right? And I just find that so inspiring. So even in the economy, there's an example of this shift.
Yeah. Oh, that's beautiful. I'll just say a bit, but other people do please join in. You reminded me, Gloria, that there's it's tricky because I don't want to spoil the vision, but there's been so much conflict. Just looking out on social media or anywhere you look, there's so much division and fragmentation. And this has been coming to me ever since Jupiter and Saturn went into Aquarius. It's like somehow we have to evolve consciousness that can go beyond that and can hold both. And it's very easy to get lost in anger and hatred and blame. And you see that everywhere you look. Anger, hatred, and blame, which is rooted in fear.
Of course.
Even these big oligarchs and or these plutocrats, and the only reason they get like that is fear.
Yeah, fear of loss, fear of scarcity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so it's not easy, because I'm as bad as the next person for getting enraged by some outrage.
Yeah, atrocities.
They are. Yeah.
I think the important thing is to recognize the fear.
Yeah.
No, because I can't get mad at someone for being afraid.
Yeah.
So I can recognize destructive acts as fear to whatever extent I can recognize that they are based in fear, then I don't have to go into fear myself. I can go into compassion. I still want to stop it. Right?
Yes.
But I can stop it with compassion rather than fear.
Yep. Yes, that's right. We don't then go out with our own machine gun and kill some more people, you know, much as we might want to at times, but no. That, you know, that I think it's a, you know, it's easy in theory. I think it's a big challenge because you have to feel all of it. If you just go straight into, you know, love, then that's a risky business.
Right.
You know, because the first thing is to feel the tragedy, the atrocity, the horror, there's some terribly horrible things that are happening to people, and then it's through that. It's somehow to get beyond that and to be able to hold it in the way that you would hold any wounded child or animal, you know, and heal and to find a way back to love and it or beyond, going beyond where we've, you know, where we've gone before.
Yeah.
And it is happening, as you say, you know, Jacinda Ardern, and there's various world leaders. There was a lot of stuff a few months ago about a lot of female world leaders are bringing in this new, you know, we've got the values wrong. You can't put the money at the top and the people at the bottom. It's the other way around.
Right.
And
I think that that's part of the possibility, the potential of Saturn in Aquarius, because it gives the practical approach to this vision.
It does. Yeah.
And yeah, I love that because, you know, Uranus in Taurus also is this combination of air and earth, right?
Yes.
So even though they're square,
yeah, the square is where you do the work when the planets are square to each other. Yeah.
Anybody else have a question or a comment?
Go ahead, Wendy. Yeah.
Go ahead and talk.
So I just have a question. Actually, I have a couple of questions. The first one is because the Saturn moving into Aquarius seems so integral to Jupiter and Aquarius, not just getting too ungrounded.
Yes.
I'm interested in the duration. Do they move together? Do they
right.
go backwards and forwards? You gave a timeline of about 2 years, and so I'm just curious about that. I'm also curious about the relationship with Uranus in Taurus and how that changes. And then thirdly, I was a little bit more on the theoretical side. I was very intrigued by your description of Uranus as kind of the connection to the greater whole, because I've always associated that more with Neptune. And
that too, both Uranus
and the dissolving. But I'm wondering, and so if you have more to say, but
yes,
because of visualization you gave was very much the path of Kundalini, and Kundalini is very associated with Uranus. I kind of went, oh, okay, well, that's Uranus is like that lightning bolt that takes us there, and then Neptune is sort of more the residing in that space, or the reservoir of love, for example, that Gloria was talking about. We need to access to get through the fear. But my main question is just the timing, and how do you see these planets continuing to interact over the next couple of years?
Good question, and I'm going to talk about this in the second half, but you're absolutely spot on. Neptune and Uranus are the two that take us into these other dimensions of consciousness. Pluto goes right down into the instincts of the body, and to a certain extent, you know, that's a different dimension of consciousness, but it's Neptune and Uranus that really raise the vibration. So Uranus goes to the mind of God, but Neptune is more sixth chakra and goes to the heart. It's the emotion. It's this ocean of feeling, and we are one. And if you get hurt, I get hurt. And it's the felt sense of that is Neptune. I love Neptune. I love Uranus too. And for this year, Jupiter's racing ahead. Jupiter moves quite a lot faster than Saturn. Jupiter will go into Pisces very soon. Sorry, I don't have the dates. Could look them up. And it goes into Pisces. It pops into Pisces. It's there for a couple of months, and then it retrogrades and comes back into Aquarius. It comes right back, and then it goes forward again, and then it goes into Pisces. So next year, Jupiter will spend a year in Pisces. Saturn is much more slow moving. It's still only at 12 degrees of Aquarius, and it will do the same thing. It will go forward, then it will retrograde, and then it will go forward. But it doesn't leave Aquarius until the beginning of 2023. And all that time, unless there's any more questions, if anybody was sort of burning to share something, I'll just go on to, because the questions you've asked, Wendy, are about where we're the next. Right, I'll go for that. Let's see what I've got in my slides. Let's have a look. Yeah. I thought I had a little bit more information about that, but I don't. So I can look the dates up before the end and I can email them to you. That's very easy. I don't know why I didn't think of doing that. I haven't focused on Jupiter in Aquarius. You know, Jupiter is very important because Jupiter is so important because it gives you such a good feeling. I've got an Aquarius ascendant, so Jupiter went over my ascendant, and I just had this really blissful time in the middle of this pandemic. And Jupiter gives you the inspiration. It's the Jupiter and Uranus get on very well. Jupiter, the king of the gods and the principle of creativity and co-creativity, and Uranus, so they very much, this kind of vision of the possibility of love, the possibility of universal happiness. That's Jupiter in Aquarius. The best of Aquarius, the group, that we're not going to leave anybody behind. And it's not okay for some people to have all the wealth and power while people are dying for lack of medication or protection, or, you can't mess with the earth in the way that so many corporations have done. Do you know, I read on Facebook, good old Facebook, 100 companies in the world are responsible for 70 or 80% of the carbon emissions. So, the whole, it's not us. We can recycle our plastic bags as much as we want, but if we don't get political change, the human race is going to, burn out. That we can, Jupiter, inspiration, we got to care for each other more. And some of the waves of political awakening that are happening are wonderful. And that's Jupiter. Saturn was the old ruler of Aquarius. So before, Uranus was discovered at the time of the American Revolution. So it goes with revolutions, at the time of the French Revolution. And before that, Saturn was considered to be the ruler of Aquarius. And so they're not, they work in the same field of how do we make our society work? How do we make good law? How do we deal, thinking back to Chiron and Prometheus, how do we deal with the pain of being human? How do we ease, the woes of Pandora's box? And Saturn is in Aquarius and will be for all of this year and next. And I'm hoping this is not going to be too difficult for people who are not always into astrology. Uranus is the planet that rules Aquarius. And Saturn used to be the ruler. Saturn is in Aquarius right now. And Uranus, as Gloria has already said, is in Taurus, which is at 90 degrees from Aquarius. And what that means is that right now, as we speak, Saturn in Aquarius is at 90 degrees to Uranus in Taurus. And this is called a square in astrology, and it's a critical relationship because they are coming from very different places. So Taurus is so different to Aquarius. It's an earth sign. It's by far the most sensual and embodied of the earth signs. You know, Taurus loves life on earth. Taurus likes good food and lovely music and art and sensuality and sexuality. And it likes money and it likes good living. It likes a life in the sun. And it's really so much about being here, this life, this moment now, you know, this food that I'm about to eat, and or this garden that I'm cultivating, or these animals that I'm looking after, and you know, I'm doing it really well. This is all this embodied material, animal, you know, love of this amazing earth. And there is, you know, the Aquarius, which is up in the clouds, you know, thinking about things and writing little mathematical formulas and having lightning bolt and do, and the risk with Aquarius is not on the earth. Aquarian, the Sun, Moon, in Aquarius, Ascendant, whatever, they're notorious for their love of humanity, but they can be very cold in personal relationships. They're not, you know, they don't do the individual, they do the conceptual and the group. So this square, and do stop me, do kind of flag up in the chat or something if you're not funny, but this square between Saturn and Uranus, I think it says so much about what's being asked of us. And it also says something about the risks of the times that we're in. And I think what I'll do is, hello. Okay, thanks, Bernard.
I was
yes.
What you said earlier about you know, Uranus being the connection to the divine and the connection to the universe, universal consciousness, is also one of the things that I think of when I think of Taurus is values.
Yeah.
So it's that infusion of these values.
Yes.
That vision.
Absolutely, absolutely. This is what is on offer at the moment. This is what is, you know, as we're immersed in this Aquarian energy, and we've got Saturn square Uranus. You know, they move to and fro. They go direct, they go retrograde, but they actually stay in this square. They don't really leave it until 2023. So we've got a lot of time. And Saturn is the principle of reality. And is, you know, and the earth and well, let's do this. So I always do this when I'm talking about Aquarius. Another story, which I think speaks to the challenges of Saturn in Aquarius square Uranus in Taurus. So one of the Greek creation myths, like how did it all begin? There's chaos. In the beginning, there is chaos. And out of chaos, which is just kind of everything, just this vast space, maybe the Big Bang, whatever, comes Gaia. And Gaia is the principle of form and structure. So she's comes from, or she is the void, she comes from the void, and she makes a thing, she makes matter, and she is the earth. So she takes all the raw potential that is in the void, and she manifests this beautiful planet with mountains and the oceans and life. She creates life, she creates the biological life. And in fact, I'll go into the slides. I'll stay with this. So here is Gaia, and the first thing that she does is she creates the sky, she creates the mountains, and she creates the oceans. And the sky is the sky god Uranus, which is Uranus, who later became Uranus. And Gaia longs for love. And so she mates with Uranus, and they start to have children. And the children of Gaia and Uranus are the Titans. And Uranus doesn't like his children. He is, and this is the thing with Uranus and Aquarius, he's an idealist, he's a perfectionist. In the world of the mind, you can create anything. You can imagine anything. You can imagine it absolutely perfect, no flaws. And when the Titans are born, they are flawed. There's the Cyclops with one eye. There's another one with 100 arms. And he doesn't like these children. He takes them and he hurls them back into the earth. He hurls them back. He traps them in Taurus, in the womb of the earth. And Gaia's not happy with this. And eventually, Gaia gives birth to Kronos, who's Saturn. And she hides Saturn away from Uranus. And Kronos is the lord of time, and he has his sickle. And when the moment is right, Kronos leaps out on Uranus and he castrates him, takes his sickle and he castrates him. And he throws his genitals down into the ocean. And out of the ocean, out of the semen of Uranus, rises Aphrodite, the goddess of love and beauty. So Uranus is dethroned, he's no longer king, and Kronos becomes the king of the gods, and he ushers in the golden age, the cornucopia. Kronos is Saturn, is the names of Saturn. However, Kronos is afraid that his children will do to him what he did to his father, and so he eats his children, he swallows them. As soon as they're born, he swallows them. And his partner is Rhea, and she doesn't like this, and so she eventually gives him a stone to swallow instead of the child that is Zeus. And Zeus is hidden away, and the stone makes Kronos sick, and he vomits up all the children, which are the Olympian gods and goddesses, and there's a big battle, and Zeus wins. And one of the things that struck me recently about this story, which, you know, is this primal story, is where did we come from? How did it all begin? Is the violence in it. That Uranus and Kronos, they don't just sit down and sort of have some therapy. You know, they're killing each other. and Kronos is eating his children, you know, and the goddesses are kind of just putting up with it. And so it speaks to, you know, this deep-rooted violence that erupts in our society. The cruelty and the shootings and the wars and the disempowerment and all the kinds of brutality and atrocity that we see. And I'm just wondering if the times that we're in, you know, a lot of indigenous peoples, a lot of elders, a lot of mythical traditions are saying that this is a very significant moment that we're in. It's not a mistake, you know, that all these eruptions that we've seen. It is consciousness trying to come through, and we are in a time where we can take a great step, and, you know, a previously unimaginable step. And you know, one of the things that I've been thinking in recent months is can we heal this primal wound of, you know, of the patriarchy, by which I don't mean men. I mean this kind of consciousness which comes from the Romans and the Greeks, where we have to castrate each other and kill each other and eat each other and punish each other with horrible torment. And if we can find a better way, a different way, a way that includes that energy of, you know, Neptune and Uranus, of if we can step into that, the embodied, heartfelt sense of oneness, of unity, that the fate of the earth is my fate and the fate of the human race is my fate, and the battering of any child is the battering of my inner child, and so on, and the disempowering that it's all of us. Yes, Wendy. Yeah. Is that now? Maybe that was before. Did you have a question?
No, I did. More of a comment that I hadn't really heard. I've heard that story a long time ago, but not. It seemed to me that the precursor, the predecessor to the eruption of violence in between individuals is the repression that's symbolized by hurling the children into the earth and by swallowing them. Yes. And so we're already creating internal division in the psyche, right? There's the repressed elements down, hurling into the earth, down into the unconscious, into the collective. And so that's our metaphorical internal division. We're divided against ourselves. We're not in communication. And that as a result, then we have the external eruption. So I don't think we can look at healing the society without some support for healing the individuals and the way we're divided inside.
Absolutely, absolutely right. That's absolutely at the heart of that myth. If something happens where we become divided against ourselves. So in the beginning, Gaia is not divided. She loves all of her creation. She's full of love for the earth, loves the beauty, creates the mountains, creates the oceans. You know, this is nature. This is Mother Earth, who is universally loving and accepting, and doesn't have these divisions. And there's something about Uranus, and you know, that points to, you know, what Gloria was saying about fear and what you're saying, Wendy, that somehow a split happens. So Uranus goes into this ideal. He's not embodied. He's not able to love all of creation in the way that Gaia does. And I mean, maybe we'll never know how that split happened, but it seems pretty clear that somehow, somewhere in the evolution of consciousness of the human race, we did this massive polarization. And to a certain extent, it's a polarization against the feminine. You know, he's imprisoning his children. He's in Tartarus, in the earth. He's, you know, he's rejecting, as you just said, Wendy, he's pushing away these children. He's criticizing them. They're not good enough. They're flawed. They're imperfect. And, you know, we're back with Prometheus and Chiron, that to be born in a body on the earth, you know, we are not perfect. And there's, you know, and psychologically, there's such a thing about human beings are messy. We get it wrong. You know, we don't all live perfect lives. Thank God, you know. We have our ups and downs, and we rub up, you know, whatever. But to be born in a biological existence for you know, 70 years or whatever we get, hope it's more than that, it's messy. And it's absolutely critical for our way forward that we come out of this place of judgment that says that's not good enough. you know, that any kind of judgment that says that black people are inferior, disabled people are inferior, women are inferior, different religions are right and wrong, they're good and bad and up and down. There's something about this idea of good and bad that's a mental construct, and there's something about that with Uranus. Because my ideals are good, your children are bad, and I don't want them. And so, yes, and anybody who's an artist or any kind of creator, how perfectionism, idealism is paralyzing. You know, if you're setting yourself some target about how good and special and perfect your creation is going to have to be, there's nothing better than the way to stop yourself, to get writer's block or whatever it is, to freeze, and you never do that painting, or you never start the project for fear that it's not going to be good enough. And that is the heritage of Uranus, that when you've got this ideal stuck in your mind of how perfect and how wonderful it's going to be, and then the reality occurs and you can't cope with the messiness and the divergence from the dream, then nothing will happen. And then what happens is that Saturn comes in and he castrates Uranus, and he says, no more creativity, none at all. And no children. We're going to eat the children. We're either going to stick them in Tartarus or we're going to eat them. So we're not, the children, of course, represent creativity, joy, playfulness, excitement, you know, all those qualities, vroom, imprisoned, destroyed, you know, shut down. And that's what happens with these this battle between Uranus and Capricorn. And Capricorn is not an idealist, can be actually, yeah, can be very perfectionist, but in a different way to Uranus. Uranus will destroy creativity by being too visionary, too many ideas, too perfectionist, and anybody who in their chart has too much Aquarius, too much Uranus, and they don't have Saturn, they'll never manifest anything. They'll just stay in the dream world. But if you've got too much Saturn, then life can be very, very, very grey. It's yes, duty. That's right, and it can be there can be a lot of burdens and big responsibilities and a feeling of being trapped. That goes with Capricorn and Saturn. So the freedom that goes with Aquarius is gone, and instead there's the duty and the responsibility. And these two are different ways of. Neither of them are coming from love. In a way, you know, Uranus, in a way, yes, is a beautiful vision, but there's this ghastly, you know, paralyzing, terrifying criticism that comes with it, and with Saturn, it's like, don't even go there, don't even have a vision, just get on with it as it is, just stick with your lot and plod through each day. It's so I'm sorry, but I just love the movie Moana. My granddaughter, it was the first movie she ever saw, and it's all about what we're talking about Gaia and the earth. There's this wonderful earth goddess in there. And this idea that, I don't know what's going on in Disney, because they keep producing movies that have got some of these archetypes that we're talking about, as though there's in some way they are plugged into the recovery of the earth and the earth returning. The gift, you know, that we have with this planet, the beauty and the sacred duty to be the guardians, the stewards of the earth, and to care for the animals and care for nature and care for the plants, and this kind of horror of the distortions that we have got lost in. And then here's the myth. And to come back to the astrology that we're talking about, you know, Gaia is so, well, biological life is so tender. We are so vulnerable. You know, at any moment, we can turn into Chiron with a wound that will never heal. To be in a body is such a soft and vulnerable thing to do. And there's Uranus, you know, he's out in the cosmos in the middle there, and he's having all these, you know, visionary, telepathic, telekinesis, you know, communication with divine mind and so on. And the risk that loses touch with the vulnerability, with the softness, with the gentleness of biological existence. And the risk with Uranus, because you know, it's a great point that you made, Wendy. Uranus goes through the mind, through the crown chakra, and we need Neptune as well, which takes, and Venus, Aphrodite, that's born out of the conflict of Uranus and Kronos. But what's happening in your heart? That's the question. When these big visions are happening, what's happening in your heart? And here's Kronos, who's the lord of time. And he goes with old age. He's often shown as an old man. And the potential with Kronos, with Saturn, is incredible wisdom. If we can get to a place where, well, let's see what I've got in the next slide. Okay, so let's talk about this. This is Taurus, and Taurus is the sign that most relates to Gaia. And people with planets in Taurus, they love animals, they love the earth, they love nature. You know, they love flowers. They appreciate all of it. All the sacred aspects of being in a body. Sensuality, sexuality, singing, listening, seeing, touch. This is Taurus. And this is Uranus. And this is, you know, and so just to flag this up, this is the risk of Uranus. And one of the things, well, one of the things to at least think about is things like genetic engineering. Because Uranus, yep, great mind, scientific, you know, got the formula, can figure this out, electricity, machines, you know, these are all the technology, computers, mobile phones, you know, how we've all become addicted to our mobile phones and our children. What's it going to be like for them when they are born with the internet in their face and everywhere that it can take them, and the dark web? And this is, you know, so these are some of the things we've got to be conscious of with Uranus. I don't think it's going to happen because I have such a strong sense of, you know, of angelic forces being with us, divine forces guiding us. But the risk with Uranus would be technology gone mad, so that we start living through virtual reality. Forget the body. You don't need a body. You've got a computer. Or genetic engineering. You know, there's Bill Gates buying up land. And some of these genetically engineered seeds, it's irreversible. Well, I don't think anything's irreversible, but, you know, these are the kind of risks. And are we going to have, you know, designer babies where you're choosing your baby's eye color and eliminate disability and all the, you know, what's the consequences of that? So these are some of the challenges of Uranus. You know, we're so brilliant. It goes with a brilliant mind, the mind that goes, the kind of minds that discover the DNA, the kind of mind that invents the World Wide Web, the kind of mind that can do microtechnology for a microchip. This is all the area of Uranus, as well as that telepathic connection to God. But it's genius, and always with Uranus, you know, can you know, how are we going to do these two things together? How does technology, a mobile phone and the internet, how is that going to integrate with the simple, you know, beauty of the earth? That nature's already made it wonderful and perfect. What more do we need? You know, I don't know. I'm not saying that in a way. It's like, I don't know where Uranus in Taurus wants us to go exactly. But I think, Gloria, you spoke earlier about Saturn, the potential for Saturn in Aquarius. So Saturn is often portrayed as an old man, or Kronos, or a crone. It's the wisdom of the elder. It's the people who have lived through the hard times, who know in their gut, because they've experienced it, what is the way forward, what's going to help, who have patience and
what do we need to eliminate?
Yeah.
Saturn prunes us of,
Yes.
of whatever holds us back.
Absolutely. That's right. You know, that and negative Saturn, you know, is like Uranus. It's perfectionism. It's a big inner critic. It's a father with a stick, a punishing, criticizing energy. But the positive Saturn is, you know, when we do the meditation, it's that vertical power current that's rooted in the earth and reaches, you know, it's that oak tree energy that connects the heaven and earth, is in the body and honors the body, and you know, can be with the body in the way of Christ, in the way of Chiron, in the way of Prometheus. We'll go through the suffering, but in the end, it's, you know, when they're in alignment, it's wisdom. Saturn is so much about wisdom and the ability to respond, the responsibility.
Yes, with discipline.
And exactly, with discipline. Yeah.
Yeah, it brings discipline to Aquarius.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah. And reality, that's the other thing with Saturn. You know, we'll stop Uranus from going off the scale in terms of idealism. Mm-hmm. It's like, so this, you know, here you got Uranus in Taurus, squaring Saturn in Aquarius. And somehow, you know, this is such a time about the vision for the human race, because it's Uranus and it's Aquarius. And where are we going? Saturn, what are we going to do? You know, what are the practical, real laws and structures? You know, Uranus might go, whoa, universal love, but Saturn is, how do we do it? How do we bring that? You know, how do we manifest? Saturn is the principle of manifestation. If you're talking about co-creation, you can go off with Jupiter and you can have a ball with having loads and loads of ideas and fun and creativity. And you can go off with Uranus and you can reach out to the stars and you look into the future. But if you don't have a relationship with Saturn, it will not manifest. And it can go very badly wrong. You know, if you think of Uranus and the revolutions in history, you know, Russian Revolution or China or whatever, or Cambodia or whatever, it turns into a bloodbath. The French Revolution, you've got all these ideals which are so dear to Aquarius. Freedom, brother and sisterhood, we're all equal, liberty, freedom is so important to Aquarius. And then, you know, it turns into a bloodbath and you end up with Napoleon and freedom's gone. Same in Russia, get the opposite of what you vision. So there's, you know, there was such a lesson last year with the planets in Capricorn, and it's still here. It's Saturn, which is the least popular of all the planets in the zodiac. No, you know, nobody wants a Saturn transit. Nobody wants to have Saturn conjunct their moon. We have to get past the way that Saturn turns into fear and paralysis and freezing. And this is what happens with time, with old age, with the passing of the years. What Saturn can bring is this knowledge of experience. It's not a theory. You've not read it in a book. This is what I know. This is what I've found in my own relationships with my friends and family. This is what I've found in my own, you know, wanting to manifest in my life. This is what works. This is what is going to be dangerous. This is what is going to even though it looks good. And it's tricky because, you know, we have Aquarius loves youth. Aquarius loves the young. And so, and I'm not knocking the young, but, you know, and I think they've had a very, very hard time through the pandemic. And I think they are the ones as well that are going to bring us through, because they're already getting this idea that we've got to work in groups. We've got to look after each other. There's got to be collaboration. And there's something about youth that kind of thinks it's impulsive. It doesn't know that their creative impulse is coming from fear or from judgment or from separation. And if we can do it, it's a wisdom of the elder that can say, slow down. What's that choice really about? Is that going to work? You know, we've spoken about the fragmentation, the battles, there's so much othering. There's the very obvious othering of black people, othering of people of the wrong religion, othering to a certain extent of women as inferior, othering of men as they're the problem. They're all the bad guys. They're the ones that screwing everything up. In the UK and England, we had the referendum 5 years ago. My God, what a split that made between the Brexiteers and the anti-Brexiteers. You know, the UK, the USA, the Trump and the QAnons and the non-QAnons kind of thing, and the white supremacists. And
where do you see? Where do you see in the current transits and configurations, where do you see that split? Where does that split come from? Because we have it here, we have it all over the world right now.
Yeah.
This incredible polarization.
Yes.
Almost.
I have asked myself that a lot, Gloria, and I haven't got I couldn't say that I've got an answer to that, except the conversation that we're having now about Uranus, the negative of Uranus, where it can be, you know, Uranus is a mental sign, not a feeling, so it can be heartless. And negative Saturn, where it's judgment of the other, and you are the one. And I guess somewhere you know, in the beginning, there's Gaia and there's universal love and love for all beings. And somewhere there's fear comes in, and out of the fear comes this fragmentation. And that is what I see. And and I've been lost in it myself. And it's like, how can they possibly think that? Mm-hmm. You know, and they must be stopped, and they must be stopped. That's true.
Yeah, you know? I guess it's, maybe one thing that I can think of is that Pluto is still in Capricorn.
Yeah, yes.
And Pluto tends to bring up everything that needs redeeming, right?
Absolutely.
So that we can see it. And I know in this country, this repressive energy that seems to be exemplified by and harnessed by the, you know, these extreme Republicans, right?
Yeah.
And I mean the extreme Republicans, because the Republican Party, you know, has some good things too, I'm sure, but it's these extremes, right? That have never been, I mean, they used to do all the things that they're doing, but quietly. And suddenly it's erupted into this. They don't care if, you know, if we know that they're white supremacists. They don't care.
No. They got permission to come out.
They're trying to repress the votes, and they're trying to. There's a bill in some state that children can be subjected to life imprisonment.
Yeah.
I mean, it's crazy, but it seems like when I see this transparency And I see this overtness in all of these negative repressive practices. I think that's Pluto dredging up and showing us.
Yes.
It's like when it was in Sagittarius, a lot of the corrupt, evangelical leaders were exposed, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And now it's in the sign of government control and power, Capricorn, right?
Yep.
Sign of authority, right? And the authority, we're seeing how the police, what the police have been doing for centuries, I guess, or decades anyway.
Yes.
And that were never so obvious as they are now, and now everybody has a camera on their phone, so they can document this, they can expose it, right?
Yes.
This is something that Pluto does, is to try to expose what needs to be redeemed. And that's what's, the duality. I don't know.
Yes, definitely. Pluto goes into Aquarius in 2024, and that probably, I hope, is, will be a big deal. It will be the completion, because in a way, when, while these big planets are in Capricorn, this is, just keep going, Pluto, keep digging, bring it up, because we need to know.
Yeah.
And I think this really is the challenge of our times, this fragmentation. And the easiest thing, or the most automatic thing for these, us little frightened humans is to go into hatred, and they don't belong with me, and they're not okay, and they're wrong, and I hate them, and I'm going to go and put them all on an island over there, or I'm going to shoot them all. And I guess one of the things about these crazy times of the QAnon and the white supremacists and the pro-vaxxers and the anti-vaxxers, that if you're on a path of consciousness, in the end you have to stop and say, those are good people. They don't deserve to die. They just, we just think differently. What are we going to do about this? And I'm very keen on the ideas that there's a practical, earthly thing, is they must stop. They can't be allowed to kill people. They can't be allowed to cause suffering. The elite, they can't be allowed to destroy the planet. So we have to come together to say no, stop. As a group, in a collective way. But there's something which is much more difficult to comprehend, which is beyond that, is somehow anybody who can do that from a place of love.
Yes. Because the more we do it from fear, the more we feed it.
It's just the same.
Yeah.
Sadly, even though however righteous we feel we are in our point of view, if it turns into violence, if it turns into fear, it just creates more authoritarianism, more fascism, more fear, more terror. People get more and more afraid, and everything gets worse. And so for anybody who can, I'm not denying the political realities. I don't advocate. In fact, I'm the opposite of that. One of the things that worries me is spiritual people who go into a spiritual bypass and go, it'll all be fine. Just go to the fifth dimension or whatever. And it's here, there are people dying right now. We have to, so we somehow we've got to be Saturn. We've got to be practical. We've got to be of the earth and be in this world. And, it's a big stretch. We
still hold the vision.
We got to hold the vision, and we got to hold it in the heart. Mm-hmm. I think this is the thing for Uranus. It's for all those scientists who are working on the genetic engineering, and some of them doing brilliant work. But can you make sure every time that it comes through the heart, that it's not just, up here. All those poor atomic scientists who went and worked on the atom bomb and regretted it bitterly, Oppenheimer and so on. And the question is, what happens in your heart? And, and is it possible to hold these warring factions and all the madness and all the craziness and the fury that's out there, the furies, when Kronos castrated Uranus, where the semen went into the ocean, up came Aphrodite, the goddess of beauty, but where the blood fell on the earth were the furies. This when you get overwhelmed by rage so that you want to kill somebody. Can we heal them? Pallas Athena, another myth, she brings healing to the furies. And the way that she does that is they have to be heard. So one important stage about dealing with all these crises is listening to people. It's being, it's Chiron being with this wound, the wound of racism, the wound of sexual violence, the wound of the loss of the land to the indigenous people, to tolerate, to simply be present with it. This is so sad. And then to take action that will protect and support people who have been wounded, and then somehow to do this miraculous thing where we go to a dimension of consciousness in which we can hold all of it, every single bit of it, in love.
And especially the feminine. You spoke of the feminine earlier and patriarchy, and it seems to me that these Greek myths really illustrate how the patriarchal forces, which is all these male gods going, hold, they in a sense are the problem.
They are, yeah.
And it's the feminine, and also Chiron, but Chiron is masculine, but he is part animal.
Yes.
So he's the exception in terms of that patriarchal drive. Yeah. And it's the feminine that heals and balances, right? Yeah. And it's like Mars and Venus. When you have too much Mars, it's warfare, it's violence, it's anger. It has to be balanced by Venus. And of course, you have to have, if you have too much Venus, then nothing gets done, right? Yeah. So the challenge, I think, for women is not
very much
react to, what we see going wrong through fear and anger and, resistance, but to bring in the feminine creativity and the feminine heart-centered spiritual wisdom that needs to balance. Yeah. But let's see if there's any other questions, because we are almost out of time.
Yes.
Any other questions? Anybody?
Yes, go ahead, Wendy.
Actually, it's mostly just a couple of comments. The first is in regards to, I'm going to go backwards from when I first put my hands up. The first is in regards to the concern about the sort of the violence and the polarization. And it seems to me that a lot of that's being enabled, even though it's reflected in the Plutonian dynamics, it's being enabled by Uranus in the division of the media, right? So people can be public with their white supremacy because the media is divided and everybody's living in completely different bubbles. And to a certain extent, then we have to say who's doing that, and it's the plutocrats. So it's the plutocrats, which I never thought of Pluto until you said that word earlier today. It's like, oh, of course, isn't that amazing? Plutocrats. So it's the plutocrats who have kind of co-opted Uranian technologies to maintain the old order. And in our country, I don't know about other countries, they're basically exploiting the lack of questioning on the working class people and controlling them through the programming of the media. And the media has been extremely, all the research from the hypnotherapy understandings has gone into how to control people, keep them glued to their screens, and how to actually program people. And so there's a significant anti-consciousness evolution stream that's happening from largely the plutocrats through the way the Uranian media is being used. That's one comment. The other comment is back to Saturn, and all the images were of old people, old men. But, I don't know if it's just an American father time, but there's, in the new year, we have the baby. And I personally have this overwhelming amount of Saturn in my chart. It's, been my bane of my existence my whole life. And my first astrologer said, these Capricorns, they get younger as they get older. And so I've had that as a personal mantra. And I've looked at old people and what does it take to be one of the old people that gets younger as they get older? The old people who are just delightful and not the ones who are rigid. And it does have to do with keeping your flexibility and letting go and continuing to allow your consciousness to develop into wisdom. So it seems to me that we need to have in the Saturn images the aspect of the old person that's young, right? It's more of maybe a Taoist or an ancient woman who was talking to who lived in the forest, the herbal mother who was always young because she was talking to the trees and the squirrels and the flora and the fauna.
Yeah.
And then just two more comments back. You asked about Disney. I don't really watch any of Disney myself, but they bought Lucasfilms a number of years ago, and George Lucas is the guy who loved Joseph Campbell and met with him to bring myth into it. So I don't know if it predated that, but certainly that tradition would come along with Lucasfilms. And then the last thing back is it's a book recommendation that I hesitate to recommend because it's hard to read, but it's called The Master and the Emissary. It's by a Brit, Ian McGilchrist. And he's a surgeon guy, neuro researcher, and it's basically about the division in the brain, right? So if we're looking for the source of our divisions, or that he's really mapped the patterning into the brain. So the master is part of the brain and the emissary is a part of the brain, and how maybe we have them in the wrong place, where the master is not the one who would be qualified. It's a very hard to read. I haven't finished it, but it's worth getting from the library. Just read the first couple chapters.
Yes, I think it's two things about that. One is I think Saturn, the energy of Saturn does go with a child energy. And the reason I think that is I've got Saturn on my ascendant right now. Oh. And I've been, for these last few months, really aware of my inner child. And really getting conscious about that. And I think that and the sort of negative use of Saturn is to split away from the child, and the child is vulnerable and emotional and foolish and mistaken and so on, and Saturn to reject all that and to eat the children and and absolutely, as you say, Wendy, the old people who don't get ossified are those that the child is still alive, and the joy in life and the love of life.
Well, I like the archetype of the crone too.
And the crone is absolutely Saturn. Yeah. All these female elders, all these indigenous groups with the women.
Yeah. And Capricorn is a feminine sign.
It's a feminine sign, absolutely.
We think of it as, all these masculine.
Well, everything's got kind of, it's not men's fault, but everything has got sucked into the patriarchy. There's this huge disparity of power and value. And I mean, the witch burnings of the medieval times, God knows how many women were burned as witches in Europe. And that was eliminating the crone. Right. And they succeeded.
Yes.
And so, yeah, that's absolutely the crone. It's the older women with the child still alive in them, and oh, you know, there's a Native American saying, you know, nothing must be done to harm the children.
Mm.
Well, how far have we got from that? You know, everything is done to harm the children. And the idea that whatever choices you make, you're there for the future. You're not just looking 7 generations past. What's it going to be like in 200 years' time? You know, we don't do these. So these are some of the Saturn energies. And then because I think what you say about Pluto, Wendy and Gloria, is terribly important. And Pluto has to do with power. You know, all the archetypes of the planets, if you get to know the planets, if you meet Pluto, Pluto is going to be very scary, you know, but what Pluto wants of us, it's like as Saturn wants us to find our own authority, Pluto wants us to find our own power.
Yes, authentic.
Authentic, you know, not power over, but going, you know, in your guts, in your instinctive, you know, and I came from God, I came from consciousness, I'm a child of spirit, and I have this power, you know, I've got this little sort of crucible of power, it's mine, and I don't need to get it from somebody else, but I need to be in
powerful force.
Yeah,
is love.
We're so powerful. But I mean, I'm not saying that in a glib way, because it's not easy, because we are so, we have become so disempowered over the centuries, over the millennia, that if you look at a martial artist, that, you know, the way they're in touch with the forces of time and the body and the instincts, or, you know, a tribal person living in the forest, living, you know, hunting on the plains, you know, that is Pluto. That ability to be at one with the environment and to flow with the chi, that's Pluto. And I do think that Pluto has still got work to do in Capricorn. And I'm not saying it will be a picnic when Pluto goes into Aquarius either. Mm-hmm. But this is the, you know, you've both raised this issue of power.
Right. And I think
what we do with it, yeah.
I think that there's evidence, you know, that we have never been more powerful in terms of our destructive potential, right?
Yes. Yeah.
However, there has to be another side to that. If our power to destroy has never been greater, then it has to follow that our power to create and to love has never been greater.
Yeah.
Our potential, right? And that's the authentic power that we need to harness.
Yeah. And Pluto is the principle of more than any other planet. Pluto is about transformation.
Exactly.
You know, so we've been through a very deathly time last year, when the fear of death was like stalking the streets in many ways, not just the pandemic. And yet with Pluto, something dies, and then, you know, then out of the ashes is the phoenix. And Pluto also rules birth and childbirth. Again, the goddess. You know, it's it's a deeply feminine principle.
Yeah.
And so this also power and always coming back to love. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
There's an interesting comment that James Hillman made in one of his books. He's a Jungian.
Yes, I know who James. Yeah.
And it stuck with me all these years. His comment was that if you look at Greek and Roman society, Roman was more violent. If you look at the Colosseum and the like, he says, but and he attributed part of that to with the Greeks, the violence was in the theater, it was in the plays. And so you had people going, and they were, because he was saying these things are in the unconscious, they're part of human nature. You have to have an expression. So why not channel those things through a creative pursuit, so that they can not be repressed and separated off. They can be exposed in this social venue, but not harming people. And that the Romans didn't have that same theater, and so their theater became what happened, the gladiators and the slaves and the terrible stuff in the what do you call it? The arenas, the Colosseum. That's the word I'm looking for.
Right.
It has stayed with me forever. That particular quote is just one of those gems.
Yes.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I'm totally with that.
Well, because
The
Greeks,
creativity, yes, is one of the expressions of Pluto. Yeah.
yeah, when we think of art, you know,
Yes.
the Greeks had much more in the way of art.
Yeah.
Whether it was theater, or whether it was sculpture, or whether it was architecture, you know, they were much more oriented artistically than the Romans were.
Yeah.
And there's the Venus.
Yeah, Taurus, absolutely. There we are with Taurus again, which is so much to do with art, music, art, drama, poetry.
Oh, well, I wish we had another 2 hours to explore this further. But unfortunately, we're out of time. Thank you so much, Rebekah. And I hope you'll visit us again soon.
Yeah, a pleasure. Lovely to be with all of you. Lovely to see you guys again.
And thank you, everyone, for attending. And hope to see you soon, Rebekah.